So it's been said that trying to organize anything with Bitcoiners is like herding cats. And I can certainly attest to that. Today's guests actually decided to go and herd a lot of cats by organizing Australia's first Bitcoin-only conference last year, Bitcoin Alive. And so it's coming up again this year. Bitcoin Alive 2024 is on the 23rd of March, and it's going to be bigger and better than ever, according to these fellas. And so I was like, let's have a chat. I wanted to actually hear the origin story and let people sort of just get to know a little bit about the people behind the conference, because there's a lot of work that goes into it. But as an attendee, you rock up, you listen to some of the chats, you walk around and chat to your mates, you're in like this sort of Bitcoin honeymoon dream, and then you go. But these fellas are making it all happen behind the scenes. So I think you'll enjoy today's conversation. What I will say is if you haven't got your tickets, there's still time. Head on over to bitcoinalive.io and then use this promo code. It'll get you a little bit of a discount from what I understand. Ricky Martin. Yes, living La Vida Loca, that sort of fella. Literally use that code and see what happens. Maybe there's a surprise. I don't know. But either way, they'll know I sent you. So that'll be rad. All right, friends, enjoy the show. And I hope to see you guys at the conference.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay. What's the second best? There is no second best. There is no second best crypto asset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Why Bitcoin Show. I'm your host, Dale Warburton. It's a weekly podcast on why Bitcoin matters and what makes it completely different to all other cryptocurrencies. If you're interested in Bitcoin and you'd like to distill crypto fact from fiction, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Why Bitcoin Show, boys. I have got Dylan and Chris from Bitcoin Alive in the house. Welcome to you both.
Hey, Dale. Thanks for having me.
Stoked to chat to you guys. Let's start off with the beginning, because I don't know this story about how you guys got together and decided to do this. I've chatted to Chris in one of my earlier episodes about the Bitcoin Alive story, and I'd encourage listeners to go and have a listen to that. But how did you guys as a pair decide to actually go and pull the trigger and start Australia's first Bitcoin conference, as it were? We used to have, we've had bush bashes, but I think those are maxi affairs. And this is now a more mainstream Bitcoin only conference. And it took some balls. So I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, sure. So I guess when did it happen? Mid 2022, roughly. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are in the various Telegram groups, Bitcoin Sydney and all the other major cities of Australia. Everyone had been talking about how we needed a Bitcoin conference for a while. And I also wanted that to happen. So I was part of that conversation, and so was Chris. There was a kind of spin-off group that formed out of that. And, one thing led to another, and calls were arranged and meetings and discussions progressed. And at the end of the day, it turned out that myself, Chris, and my partner, Jess, who is a professional event manager, I guess we were the last ones standing who were kind of ready and still there, willing to commit and take the risk. Like you said, there was a fair bit of risk involved. We had to fund it all ourselves and take that initial risk, but we thought that the market was there, and we thought that, we knew there was enough people in Australia who needed a Bitcoin conference to make it work.
Absolutely. I mean, and the thing is, it's not as if at the time that you guys went ahead and ran the conference that the market was absolutely pumping. I mean, it's not obvious that that's going to be an easy sell, and so there certainly was a lot of risk there. I guess
it was arguably the middle of a bear market, so you're right. Yeah, it was a pretty terrible time to do it. But historically, that's actually been my favorite time to get stuff done, and you'll hear that echoed by a few other Bitcoiners around who have been here a few cycles. They kind of like the peace and the quiet, so to speak, of the bear market, where the lunacy and all the stupidity is kept somewhat quieter, as opposed to a bull market, of course, where things get absolutely bonkers, and it's really hard to stay focused with all the noise and all that sort of stuff. So I actually prefer
Mhm.
building stuff in bear markets, just because you've got a little bit more clarity. Yes, okay, some things are harder, of course, as well, because interest levels are not quite there, more broadly speaking. So trying to run a mainstream conference where you want lots of attendees and lots of sponsors and lots of participants is really hard when the interest levels are not quite as high as what they would be if the price was up. But you get what you get, and you kind of got to roll with the punches. And that's the beauty of running a Bitcoin business, is you get to understand that cycle and you kind of get in the groove with it. And yeah, I'm really stoked with how our first year went, and it was a lot of risk. I can still vividly remember the first time Dylan and I and a couple of others, I think there was like 5 of us on a phone call, the 5 that kind of got to the end of the Telegram group conversations and thought, okay, maybe now it's time to step it up to a phone call. So we all got on a video call. I was actually on holidays in Queensland, in your hometown, or home state, I should say, Dale. And yeah, I can still vividly remember that phone call where actually Dylan and Jess presented like a little bit of a pitch, which was totally unexpected. I didn't think that we would have gotten that far, but they had like a little presentation made where they chose a venue, which turned out to be the venue that we actually run Bitcoin Alive at.
Awesome.
So it's a little bit nostalgic just thinking back on it, even though it's only like 18 months ago,
Feels
what
like
we
a
managed
lot.
to do. It feels like a lot longer. Yeah, the amount of work and effort that went into year 1 was crazy, just because we didn't have so much time for it. Like we only really had 4 months from
Wow.
sort of deciding, okay, yep, the 3 of us are doing this, to actually delivering the event, which is, absolute suicide. But thankfully we didn't, sort of, we came out the other end, which is good. But now with year 2, we obviously have a lot longer, which is nice. And we've put in a lot of the foundation work on the brand, on the conference.
Yeah.
We've got all the back end stuff where we know how to build agendas and all the things that we basically had to learn for the first time putting on a conference. We've done that learning and we've kind of absorbed that. And now we can take all that into year 2, have a lot better of a head start, and obviously deliver, hopefully, what people think is an even more awesome end product.
Totally.
I will add on the backstory that the idea of a conference in Australia has been floating around the Bitcoin Sydney meetup group for a number of years, and it always came down to, from what I hear, it always came down to the thought that to get these international speakers to come all the way to Australia, and to get people interested to come all the way to Australia, and to take that financial risk was just a bit too much. But yeah, just needed to do it, right? And just pull the trigger.
Yeah, exactly. Screw it, just do it. And it's so weird when people like overseas, and I mean, I'll put myself included, having migrated here. You think of Australia, it's like it couldn't be further than anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? And it's a real schlep to get across here, and it's a proper proof of work. So when I saw old Knut at the last one, I just was like, my God, yeah, there was a wonderful rabbit to put out of the hat, because yeah, I mean, he certainly had made quite a splash with some of his work, and it was awesome to see him there. Tell us a little bit about like there's unsung heroes, and there's unknown challenges, and that attendees like myself are just not really across. Like I'm just walking around saying, what's up to my mates, enjoyed some of the prezos, but for the most part was just having a laugh with some of my closest mates in the space. So tell us about some of the challenges and potentially some of the things that went wrong in the back end that people had no clue about, but you guys managed to continue anyway.
It is very much like that. When you're not on the inside, you don't really have any ideas as to what goes on to put this thing together. I think, thankfully, and maybe Dylan and Jess would have slightly differing opinions because we're each doing slightly different things on the actual day of Bitcoin Alive. From my perspective, not a lot really went wrong at all, which is kind of a shock, because I wouldn't be surprised if I said, oh, here's a list of 10 things that went wrong on year 1. And, but I think we managed to slap it all together pretty well. And for the couple of hundred people that were there last year, hopefully they think the same and have told a few people, and maybe we'll have a couple hundred more for this year's event. But yeah, for me, I don't think anything really went wrong. Like the kind of totality of everything that you've got to do is probably like the biggest challenge, and that's maybe a bit of a cop out, but like the collection of all the work, like especially year one when you don't have that groundwork laid, understanding how conversations with speakers go. We had 30 plus speakers last year. That's 30 speakers that actually got onto the bill. You can think about how many more that perhaps didn't make it, or we had conversations with and it just didn't work out. Yeah. So, our basic standard policy was to have a video call just like this podcast, not recorded, of course, but a video call with everyone speaking at Bitcoin Alive. So we, got to meet them. They got to meet us. They got a feel for what we're trying to do. Like a lot of DD, I guess you could say, and just making sure that the right people are involved. And, that's just one element, and that's a challenge in its own right. You got to replicate that again now with sponsors. And then you got to be thinking about attendees. What do they want? So I'm glad to hear your feedback was that you were just walking around enjoying yourself, having a good time and not really noticing everything, because that means we got our job done. That means, people didn't see the duct tape and the things holding up the walls because, we held them up sufficiently enough so they didn't come down crumbling. But, thanks, Dale. Thanks for being a part of it and for attending last year. Like, at the end of the day, the event was always made to please Bitcoiners and to be that time of year where we can all get together from, this big country. To what you said earlier about the proof of work involved with coming to Bitcoin Alive. And, shout out to Knut. I've got his shirt on at the moment. He put in the work and he made the effort to come all the way to Australia, somewhere he's never been before, and he absolutely loved it. I think I'm paraphrasing, but he quoted on Twitter just a week or two ago that it was the most fun he had ever had on stage at Bitcoin Alive. So that's a huge compliment to us. Is that
I'm just laughing because I remember that's so well, and that presentation. There's certainly a few laughs in there. I won't go into detail there, but.
Well, look, if you want to catch up on it, it's on our YouTube. So head over to our YouTube channel and check out the Bitcoin is Alive panel, which was hosted by myself and with a couple of fantastic minds, including Knut, and it got a bit silly. But again, that's what we want to do. We want to create like experiences and moments for people that necessarily can't be replicated, by listening to a podcast or by watching a seminar or just doing some random YouTubing or whatever it is. Like, Bitcoin Alive is special in the sense that it connects us physically, but then, brings together all those great minds in that one room. And we just think that, put everything together in one mixing bowl and you're going to get yourself a pretty good cake at the end of it. And, that's what we got. That's what we got with 2023. And we're hoping we can add some more flour and more yeast, and this cake can grow even bigger for 2024. Because, we got some really exciting things planned. Some things we can't say, unfortunately, yet. But we are getting close to being able to say it, which is really exciting.
Awesome. And you know what, just for those who haven't attended and whatnot, what is the overall goal and objective here for you guys? Like, what would you regard as a success? Not necessarily in terms of number of attendees. Perhaps I'll throw this one to Dylan. Like, what do you reckon?
Success, I think, would be a day full of Bitcoin conversations where we, explore Bitcoin with the lens that we as Bitcoiners have, that we know in depth, and to show that to the outside world. So one of the key reasons we wanted to put on a Bitcoin conference in Australia was because at the time in 2022, if you looked at the landscape, there was a whole bunch of crypto conferences, Web3 conferences, and DeFi and all of that, blockchain, whatever. And these conferences were drawing thousands of people with, thousands of exhibitors and sponsors trying to sell you the newest dog token. But there was nowhere so if you were a newbie to the space and you wanted to go to a physical event, sure, you could go to Bitcoin meetups, but you'd have to find them. What we wanted to do was present a Bitcoin only conference to the wider world, to say that, look, there are these hundreds, if not thousands of people in Australia who care only about Bitcoin and are happy to just disregard the rest of that stuff as pure noise. So you should come and join us and hear from us why we think Bitcoin is the signal. So I think that would be success. One of the key goals of Bitcoin Alive is to bring people in from outside of just Bitcoiners. We want no coiners and crypto people and financial media, and everyone is welcome to come to Bitcoin Alive to learn about Bitcoin and kind of expand their thoughts beyond the headline kind of FUD.
Yeah, Totally. And I think, inevitably what you'll find in the early days of a conference as it evolves, like in the early days, you'll see, okay, it's like 70% Bitcoiners, 30% like, I guess Joe Public, Joe or Jane, or whatever the case would be. And then, as the years progress, that dynamic shifts quite dramatically. And then, if you look at something like, Miami or Bitcoin Miami or Nashville or whatnot, they'd expect, in the vicinity of 15,000 people, 20,000 people, and they come from all different walks of life. And it all started very small. So it's going to be quite interesting to see, given what's happening right now with a whole bunch of exciting stuff in Bitcoin, which I'd love to get your guys' take on, with obviously you've got the ETFs coming, that's going to thrust Bitcoin front and center in the mainstream consciousness. We've got the halving coming up. And just remind me of the date of the conference.
Saturday, 23rd of March.
Yeah. All right. So it's just before that halving, and it's quite likely that we're going to see some reasonable price appreciation between now and then, just given the dynamics of the ETF play that we think's at, that's on the go. So I suspect that you guys are going to get a lot more interest than I guess in the Sleepy Bear. And it's really good to see, man. I must say, like the feedback that myself and others gave Chris and the team, broadly speaking, was like, it was a real success. It was wonderful to see all the Bitcoiners just really embrace it and support it. I think the diversity of topics was really interesting. And I suppose the question that I'd have then around the specific topics would be like, how are you guys thinking about this content? Because you're going to have a diverse group of people that range in expertise from, absolute noobs to, experts. Let's call the security experts of the world, the Catans of the world. He's not going to go there and learn anything. And then you've got like people just coming in fresh and, not even sure what private key is all about. So, how does one try and strike that balance with the mix? So what have you guys got in store for us this year?
Yeah, that's a really great question, Dale. And it's one that we spend a lot of time thinking about on our side of the fence. Look, you're right. You're never going to be able to please everyone. And we know that. And we've only got, so much time with a single day conference. So, we can't cover everything. We can't cover everything that we want to cover for as long enough. But we'll try our best to strike that balance. To what you mentioned earlier, and I would consider you to be somewhat of a seasoned Bitcoiner. Perhaps maybe you don't think yourself as that, but in terms, we're all at our own levels of technical understanding, and Catan will be at Bitcoin Alive, and Catan will be doing the teaching. So definitely check into Catan's workshop this year. Shout out to him for all the great work he does. But what we found is most of the Bitcoiners just want to get together and hang out. The content itself tends to almost be like secondary to the fact that they're just getting together and they're hanging out and they're having conversations, they're sharing hugs, they're shaking hands, they're having beers, they're having laughs, they're playing pool, whatever it is that they're doing, they're hanging out and they're having, the kind of conversations that they want to have. And they find their place, they dip into the conference when there's something that's super relevant for them. And then they meet up with some friends that they haven't seen for months, and there goes 45 minutes chatting and laughing. So, that's what most Bitcoiners who have been to conferences before, at least Bitcoin or other styled conferences, they just want to get together. So for everyone else who are, I guess maybe the newbies or come from a different angle, like Dylan was explaining before, some financial media or something like that, like obviously they're coming to perhaps meet some people and make some friends, hopefully. But I suspect the primary reason is they're coming for the content. So we need to make sure that we're gearing a lot of the content towards them to keep them engaged. So it is tricky. It's a tricky balance because we, of course, want to make sure that we're covering the topics that we want to cover, and, some level of selfishness. As organizers of the conference, we put together a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. So the responsibility does lie with us to try to please a lot of different crowds, and hopefully we get a decent balance across the board. We've got a little bit more room in terms of the content and the program for this year compared to last year. We've expanded to a third stage. So there's going to be a workshop stage, which is going to be a little bit more informal and a bit more hands-on. So, like I just said earlier, Catan will be running a workshop. So he'll be in there for a lot longer of a time frame than what a normal session would be on another stage, and he'll be, you know, breaking down whatever his workshop topic is in a bit more of an intimate kind of arena. So there will be more opportunities for different styled experiences for Bitcoin Live. That too, on that token of experiences, like not just the content, we want to make it fun, and we want to make the crowd have memories that perhaps they wouldn't have elsewhere. And so there's perhaps a whole lot we can't say at the moment, but I can beat around the bush a little bit. But, you know, we'll have some live performances that are different of nature. So perhaps
Ricky
musical.
Martin is going to appear or something?
Ricky Martin, is that what you said?
The South African Ricky Martin might appear.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the South African Ricky Martin. Yeah, he'll be on stage.
Living La Viva Bitcoin or something.
There we go. Oh.
But yeah, like we want to be able to, you know, offer people value for their money, and you know, have experiences that perhaps they wouldn't be able to get online or in local meetups or stuff like that. So trying to fit all that into the program as well, that's already stretched. You know, one of the big feedback we got from last year was everyone was like, the content was great, the speakers were fantastic, but we would have just liked them to go for a bit longer. Yeah, like we had 2-minute changeover times on the main stage last year, which was absolutely nuts. Like even our show call of the morning of the event told us we're absolutely mad to have only 2 minutes between. And I was like, look, girl, we've only got an hour till we open these doors. That we can't change anything now. We're running with 2 minutes. Hold on, because you know, we're in for a ride. And everything was absolutely smooth. Like no one went over. We didn't have to cut things short, go overtime here, or any of that, which is very, very common for conferences. Like pretty much every conference I've gone to, you go to a session, you're like, why is the session before still going? It should have been over by now. And like obviously things are running late. So you know, again, these are the challenges that we had to come up against, but somehow we managed to like kick all those goals really well. But yeah, I think I've babbled on for enough now. Perhaps Dylan might have some thoughts to fill in some gaps.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Shout out to Jess. I think that's one of the main reasons why we were able to pull that off.
100%.
She's a professional event manager. This is her full-time job she's been doing for 15 years. So without her, we'd be totally lost.
Perhaps Bitcoin would not be alive without Jess. Let's put it that way.
Bitcoin.
We definitely learned a lot of lessons from last year's event, and those will definitely include into this year's event. And yeah, we'll, like Chris said, we'll have 3 stages now. So we'll have the main stage where we'll have more kind of in-depth panel-like discussions on a mixture of the topics of the day and the evergreen kind of content, like things like why Bitcoin, not shitcoin, right? Why are we here? So that's the type of stuff we want to really get into in the morning and be as kind of like a welcome to Bitcoin for anyone who isn't quite as familiar as we are with the reasons why we only care about Bitcoin. Then we've got a second stage, which will be a bit bigger than last year's event, which will have more targeted kind of presentations, maybe fireside chats, and we'll have a third stage, like Chris mentioned, for workshop style content.
Cool. That's awesome. And I'm imagining for the workshops, you'll do stuff like, you know, how to set up a wallet and all that jazz. Just the stuff that a lot of newbies kind of like, and even seasoned people like just don't necessarily understand. I mean, I'll just come out and say, listen, I did not know how to go and do the whole roll your dice and create your own wallets out of scratch. I was just trusting the entropy of any wallet provider there was, like, you know, whoever they might be. So that kind of stuff, learning from the ground up, learning from first principles, definitely learning why Bitcoin, not crypto. I mean, that's the show here. You know, I've ranted and raved about my experience in shitcoin world, and yeah, it continues to rear its ugly head. And I've noticed also a lot of these crypto influencers have almost just quietly tried to get their followers to forget that they were promoting all sorts of shit in the last cycle and have embraced Bitcoin. No doubt the narrative will shift, you know, quite dramatically, and they'll hop on Boink or Dog or whatever the next thing is as soon as that becomes available. So it's so critical for us to have something that is just Bitcoin only and that's really promoting it. And, you know, also just to go back to something you were saying, Dylan, like shout out to Jess, because in my experience working with Bitcoiners, getting Bitcoiners together, and trying to do anything is like herding cats. And I say that with respect, but it's really hard. There's too many cooks in the kitchen. Everyone's got an opinion, and it just like things don't get done. I mean, I try to arrange a bush bash, and there were just so many opinions until eventually I just said, fuck it. I am going to book this location. And then it turns out I was 2 days late to my own event. But but you know, so
that's
you
what
need
happens.
someone organized.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't have a CEO, right? Bitcoin doesn't have any CEO, so we have to kind of just do our best. Like Chris said, we can't please everyone. What we want to do is kind of present what the discussion is, and then try to have that discussion live on stage. We're, to be clear, we're not going to be having people on stage arguing in favor of Dogecoin. That's completely out of the question. But like you said, in Bitcoin, maybe from the outside, it seems like we're all this cult and we all agree and move en masse. But from the inside, it really feels like we can't agree on anything. Like there's no agreement anywhere. There's constant minor and major arguments in many topics. So those are the things we want to kind of explore.
Maybe that's a feature, not a bug, though, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Because there is no top down architecture of.
There's no leader, so it can't be a cult by definition.
Yeah, it's a cultless leader. Oh, a leaderless cult. Sorry, rather.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, and I think, you know what, you bring up something interesting, because there's so much, like, especially in the last 3 months, I've got this distinct feeling that we are fighting amongst ourselves too much. Like, and I mean, I feel like we're in a family and we're bickering a lot. And it just strikes me sometimes as being a bit silly, but in some ways it's almost necessary. And let's just use one example. And it's something that I can relate to, and something that you've put out there previously, Dylan, was something about like running a node is hard. And some people go like, listen, and I'm not giving Catan shit here. I'm the last person to give him shit, but it'd be like, he often comes out and goes, look, driving a manual car's hard. And he'll go, look at all these challenging things we're doing. Like mothering is hard. Like being a mother, being a parent is hard. Like, holding your own keys is nothing. Running a node is nothing relative to these things. And like at a high level, I certainly agree. The key question though is like, most people don't have the inclination or the time to put into a lot of these things that some of us perceive as being important, some don't. So I don't know, that's something that I've thought about. Like, what are your thoughts around, like, just running like a node as an example, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's not a binary thing, really. Like a lot of these things exist on a spectrum. Like holding your keys, there is, or Bitcoin custody, there is a spectrum from ETF, exchange, holding your own keys on a mobile wallet or hardware wallet, or multi-sig. It's full spectrum. So I think most Bitcoiners would agree that the first step for someone new to Bitcoin is not a 2 of 3 multi-sig with different hardware vendors. The first step is to move along that spectrum. So as long as people are moving towards where they want to be and learning as they go, I think that's good. And the same thing exists for running a node, right? You can run a pruned node using Spectre on any computer. So that's a good first step. And you can interact with a hardware wallet using that. If you want to go to the next step, maybe you could get one of these node providers software OS to install on a Raspberry Pi, or buy something like an Umbrel. That's the next step. And then the next step after that is installing your own node from scratch, using Ubuntu and Bitcoin Core and Electrum. And that's the step that I'm at, and that I'm having a little bit of complications with. It's not the thing that I would recommend move to right away. And I don't think that this is what, we're not going to have every person in the world doing this. It's just the truth. Very few people are going to spin up a Bitcoin node from scratch using the command terminal in Ubuntu, but
absolutely,
it's available.
Yeah, totally. And it's that continual, I mean, it's a Bitcoin mindset where you're continually just trying to upgrade what you're doing, whether it's running a node or your security. And I recently did a whole security upgrade, and the most disheartening part of it all was when and this shout out to Pierce, who I sort of did it with. It was like, yeah, you're gonna have to revisit this in the next little while again because things change. And I'm like, oh God, there's nothing that's like, you're never there. You don't ever reach like perfection, particularly with the security side of things, because things are growing and developing so quickly that it's not quite like you put your system in place today and it's irrelevant within the next month or two. But it's very likely that there'll be a better setup and more optimal setup, shall we say, within a year's time. And so, that's where I start going, well, I mean, if I've buried them in various places around the earth with GPS coordinates, how sensible is that? Maybe I need something easier. Yeah, no,
Well, you know what, Dale? You can come test these ideas once a year at Bitcoin Alive. We'll be having definitely discussions on custody specifically, but obviously that's the point, right? We get together once a year here in Australia. All the Bitcoiners, all the Bitcoin minds get together, and we have these conversations. We hash out ideas. We work out what is the best kind of storage, what is the best scaling solution.
Yeah.
We're not going to perhaps solve every issue on that day, but we'll foster ideas, we'll make friends. And I've single-handedly seen a number of businesses and a number of podcasts, coincidentally or not, I don't really care, but it's good to see irrespective. But I've seen things happen since last year's Bitcoin Alive. Like, it's good. We want to see more Bitcoin related stuff happening in Australia. We've got some incredible Bitcoin startups here already, albeit not many, but we want to see more of them. We want to see more podcasts like yours, Dale. We want to see people doing stuff, people building on Bitcoin, people adopting Bitcoin. It's fantastic. We're just connecting the dots once a year. The real heroes are all the people out there building the stuff and using Bitcoin and saving in Bitcoin and choosing Bitcoin. So yeah, it's awesome that we get to do this once a year. I wanted to see it happen. If it wasn't Dylan and I and Jess doing it, someone else would have taken the baton and ran with it and figured it out eventually. I guess we got impatient, so we did it.
Totally. No, I love that, man. And you know what? Like, honestly, there were some of the topics last year, I think for some people were, paradigm shifting. Some of them I'd heard already because I had gone to a Bush Bash. But like, for example, the idea of a self-managed super, like that planted something in my brain that was like, okay, let's dig a bit deeper here, boy. And I've made the transition, so to speak. And oh my God, I couldn't be more thrilled. Like, it's the best. It's actually one of my top things that I did last year. And I couldn't be happier because I feel like a free human being. Having a look at what the other supers are doing and how they wasting your money, investing in all sorts of terrible horse shit, illiquid property, all sorts of garbage, and they still clip the ticket whether it's up or down. So I took that away, and that's something that people would have taken away from the conference. Collaborative custody, all the different ways of holding it, from your seed plates to if you've got like big amounts and you want to plan for your future with wills and estates and all that. Just understanding things from the ground up, like, just that's for me the most important thing. Like, somebody coming into the space, we as a group, I feel, are sometimes intimidating. And I've seen this happen on the Telegram channels where a noob will come in. And I remember one incident where it's like, hey guys, by the way, like, fees on OKX or this or that. And someone was like, what the fuck are you doing? Buying an OKX? And you'd be like, no, do you know what I mean? So sometimes I think the perception of us is that we are not as welcoming or friendly, but I didn't get that perception at all last year. I really got the perception of everyone was like, to the extent there were people that didn't understand things, there were people there to help. And yeah.
Most Bitcoiners are like that. Most Bitcoiners are generally helpful. Of
In
course,
person, Chris, totally. I mean, the thing is, you can talk smack behind a keyboard. When you actually get in front of them, like, I've yet to meet like a proper dickhead in the flesh. It's only like keyboard warriors.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all individuals, and we all have like differing levels of social comfort, let's say. So perhaps some of those people simply don't come to conferences because maybe that's just not their thing, and that's totally fair, But yeah, we try to make Bitcoin Alive really welcoming. Like Dylan mentioned earlier, it's open to everyone. I think for the most part, like, I have to thank the Bitcoiners and everyone that's helped, the support that we've had with this initiative to make Bitcoin Alive a thing and continue making it a thing year on year. The support's been incredible from people like yourself, Dale, and everyone else that's been out there that's helped in any amount. Like, it's been huge. It gives us a heap more confidence to do this thing, knowing that we've got
Especially
the
our
backing and the
attendees.
support. What was that?
Just want to say, especially our attendees, like,
Yeah,
really
100%.
all of you guys.
Yeah, that it's kind of an empty room with me and Dylan talking about Bitcoin, which we can just do online. So it's really important that, like, all of the stakeholders across the board are, well looked after. That's what this event is built for. This event isn't necessarily built to make us into millionaires. Hopefully Bitcoin just does that organically along the way, and we've made the right choice across the board. But yeah, we want to serve the community. We want to make sure that the Bitcoiners and those who perhaps aren't yet Bitcoiners but are open to being, or maybe one day will be, are all welcomed at Bitcoin Alive for an awesome day.
Totally. I think 2024 is the year that and this is not a unique take, but we cross the chasm or chasm, however one wants to pronounce it, and it becomes more mainstream. Suddenly now, as soon as the biggest names in finance in the world are releasing ETFs, which, we thought were approved today and will probably be approved this week, but if they're not next week or the week after or whatever the case would be, whether we like it or not, Wall Street is now here. Suddenly now this is going to, I suspect, put Bitcoin, front and center in so many people's minds. And I suppose for us, we're the early ideological inclined. I know for me, obviously number go up was important, but it was fuck you go up. I really love the idea of unconfiscatable money. I just thought that is the most magnificent idea, that no one can take this from me. And because here's the interesting thing. So chatted to my dad last night, and we're talking all about, what's happening in South Africa and all this sort of thing and capital controls. And I keep just thinking to myself, if I'm just a rogue and I just want to leave South Africa and I don't want to deal with any of the stuff like, estate duty and all these kind of things. I wanted to say to my dad, but he's not the kind who would appreciate this. I want to say, tax these nuts, because you're not going to touch my Bitcoin, because I could just take it. I could just take, whether you got $1 billion or $1 million or $10,000, you can literally just ship it across. And so it matters so much to us. That's the point of the discussion. Yeah, for me, really, it matters so much to us as an ideological group. But I suspect the new crowd and the new wave, and I think we'll see some of those attendees at this year's conference, are going to be less. They're going to just be interested for number go up. They're going to be normie folks. They're going to trust mainstream media to an extent. They needed to see that the water wasn't so cold, in the sense that it's like, oh, okay, these multi-trillion-dollar asset managers are now saying it's okay. The US regulators said it's okay. You're like, the water's not that cold. So I'd be interested to get you guys' take on, what do you think's going to happen from the cultural perspective, taking into account the fact that, the first Bitcoin Live conference was very much supported by, I guess, 70%, whatever it might be, ideological Bitcoiners. What do we think is going to happen in the future with Bitcoin from a cultural perspective, independent of the conference, post Wall Streetization, if we like?
That's a tough one and a great question. I think the Bitcoin core culture will be preserved, because it's still going to remain very extremely difficult to change Bitcoin. And the culture of Bitcoin and Bitcoiners has grown up around that if you want to change Bitcoin, go ahead, just fork it, see what happens. Like, that's the reality that may end up happening. We may get some kind of second, block size war or something that's pushed by a BlackRock or whatever. But at the end of the day, we saw what happened in the first block size war. The people won. The people who were running the nodes and holding the keys, they're the ones who get to choose what Bitcoin is. And I think that's going to remain. But like, you're correct, there's going to be a lot of new people coming into the scene, and that's something that we should celebrate, even if it does, maybe lead to less memes or different types of memes. I know that's one of the most important things in Bitcoin is the memes.
Totally. Yeah. What do you think, Chris? I mean, you're a guy who allegedly hasn't looked at the price for 2 years. And I say allegedly because I just don't know how the hell you miss it. Like, unless, I don't know, every time you see something online, you're like, whoop, it just.
Pretty much. That's actually one of the main techniques as you're scrolling Twitter. And
Yeah.
if you see something that resembles a price chart, you scroll past it before your eyes can lock on. Like, you know where the numbers are, so you know where not to look.
Yeah.
So that's very much like, it's like the skin in terms of my like level of protection from checking the price. Like, it's the outer layer. It's doing all the deflecting. But yeah, you are right. I haven't checked the price for over 2 years now. It's since 2021, late 2021. But yeah, so for me, it doesn't really matter what it does. It's the same level of excitement every day of the week, which is pretty awesome. But it's a very lonely place because I know I'm quite alone in the fact that, you know, price is irrelevant. It's very much important for 99.9% of people. That's why I am alone. So I'm kind of stuck a little bit perhaps in the future, or the future that perhaps I want to see, and I'm waiting for everyone else to you know, come join me. Should I be, you know, in the right future? Maybe I'm in the wrong one, and that's why I'm alone. But yeah, look, Dylan's right. I think that it all crumbles down to, like, does Bitcoin remain like decentralized and not captured? If it can do that, then it's probably going to always have some level of its core cultural identity. But you would assume as it becomes more popular that it will get watered down as well by more, you know, people who are less philosophical, and perhaps cypherpunk principles aren't as important to them as the earlier crowd, the early adopters, like you know, the hardcore Bitcoiners. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. And I'm just one node runner, so I'll only have one vote. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that it's going to remain pretty damn decentralized. We'll see though. Like, I kind of use the comparison of the internet as an interesting case study as to how Bitcoin might go through its journey.
Yeah.
And so the internet is largely decentralized, but has been captured to a significant extent as well. So I'm not an expert in any of this history because I'm just a 90s kid, so I grew up with the internet, but I didn't quite, not a computer scientist. I actually failed that and just became an entrepreneur instead. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. That's, I guess, the beauty of Bitcoin Alive is every year we get to have these discussions that are relevant and try to figure these answers out as a collective, right?
100%.
I think it is also interesting to see the kind of narrative is definitely starting to change on multiple fronts in the mainstream media. A lot of the articles these days begrudgingly admit that Bitcoin is here to stay and that it can't be killed, and that maybe it is a good thing that we have this digital store of value for people in oppressive regimes, and these are things that Bitcoiners are like, yeah, of course, we get it. But maybe that type of stuff, those ideas might start to seep into the everyday person's mind. And on the other front, we have the kind of environmental FUD is being, as soon as it comes out these days, it's immediately shot down by very well researched articles and rebuttals by the likes of Daniel Batten, for example. I don't think that these, Bitcoin uses so much energy, Bitcoin uses so much water, which is ridiculous.
That was a good one.
Those arguments aren't like landing anymore. I don't think anyone, they're starting to lose believability because they're just not true, right? So I think that also is a very important and interesting shift in the kind of psychological narrative of Bitcoin, which is going to be very interesting when these ETFs get approved, whenever that is, and if that does spike the price and lead a lot more people to be interested in it and put it in their portfolios as part of one of their basket of ETFs. I think there's a lot of support for that, and on the volatility side as well. I think the higher the price goes, that's going to probably lead to less volatility. So the people who have been for all this time concerned about the volatility, they may become less concerned, and they might just be okay with the odd 50% drawdown instead of the odd 80%. So
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly how it will work. I mean, it'd just be like, yeah, it's not volatile anymore, bro, but you're just not going to get as much Bitcoin. That's all for your fiat, you know?
Yeah.
Because I suppose the way I kind of tend to look at it, and that's why for me, price does matter in the bigger picture, because the way I'm thinking about it is, okay, there's a total addressable market, and let's say the total addressable market of the entire investment universe is 900 trillion. How much can Bitcoin swallow from those different asset classes? And for those of us who are in earlier, we are going to see the biggest gains in purchasing power. And for those that adopt later, obviously much less. But I think, as I was explaining to someone yesterday, actually, when I think of Bitcoin's potential, it's the equivalent of Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, Microsoft, Nvidia combined and more. That's how big their total addressable market is, without the execution risk of a market or a company. Like, things can go wrong with a company. Like, Apple was hell for years. This is code. This has to do something really simple. It's like, it's 21 million. We know what the supply is, and those are the rules. I mean, it's really quite simple, and it's enforced by thousands of people around the world. Only recently discovered mempool.space when those ortards were mucking around with all sorts of things and just in trying to transfer money off the exchange, it was like, or Bitcoin off the exchange, was hell. And then, yeah, started looking at the number of nodes, and it's quite remarkable. Do you guys have any idea of how many nodes there might be, just out of interest? Because something like 17 or 18,000 I saw there was like the publicly known ones or something like that.
I think a lot of people, it's very difficult to know the answer to this, because a lot, and possibly most people, run their nodes over Tor, so they're not publicly reachable. So yeah, who knows? It could be up to 100,000.
My understanding was there was like over 100,000 nodes, but I can't remember my source, so don't go fact check that, obviously. But
I think we might overestimate when we're deep inside this Bitcoin Twitter bubble, and think that there's so many more of us than there are. But I think still we're not few. There's a huge amount of nodes around the world.
Totally. And tell me this. I mean, this is a bit of education for me, maybe some people listening, hopefully, I'm sure. What happens if I'm a guy who just has 100 nodes, and I want to support the BlackRock fork, and then BlackRock funds, it goes to like, a neighborhood and says, gives 50,000 people in the neighborhood nodes, gives them 100 nodes each, and stick them in your basement, and this is how you run it. You know what I mean? And like, they all start running it.
I don't think I've ever thought of that before, but I mean,
you
it's
know what
possible.
I mean? It goes, here's a shitty laptop, and it's already got this pre-installed, and you just need to vote for B and not A. I mean, then
But, so
I don't know.
What you're saying is a Sybil attack, but that doesn't really work, because what's the purpose of a node? A purpose of a node is to interact with the Bitcoin network, and interacting with the Bitcoin network is receiving and sending Bitcoin. So if you're not receiving and sending Bitcoin through a node, then it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what that node does. You can change the rules however you like on your 100,000 nodes over there. If you don't have the private keys to send Bitcoin through those nodes, then it doesn't affect the real Bitcoin.
Okay. I need to research what a Sybil attack's about, because I've heard the phrase.
Yeah, that's when you just like replicate like what you said, basically. Like, you spin up 100,000 nodes, but those nodes don't matter unless those nodes are receiving and sending Bitcoin. So the owners of the private keys to the Bitcoin that exists, the 19.5 million Bitcoin that exists right now,
yeah,
those are the people who control the Bitcoin. And those are the people, if the people who hold those keys, if they want to send a transaction or receive a transaction, they need to use a node, whether that's their own node or a node they borrow, like an exchange's node. So that's another reason why you should get your coins off exchanges, because if your coins are on an exchange, then the exchange chooses the rules of their node that you must use. But if you hold your own keys, you get to choose what code your node runs.
Okay, I need to do some more learning. Nodes, I need to up my game, just in case. I think it is potentially like an attack vector or something that I need to think about, and also just part of I'm 3.5 years in this game, as it were, and it's about time. It's a bit embarrassing. So here's a couple questions for you fellas, because the three of us are really like ideological Bitcoiners. We come from different places. Obviously, me being an African, I've got my reasons. I'd love to hear each of your takes on like why Bitcoin matters to you, like at a deep philosophical level. Because when I think about myself, I want funky money so I can make changes in the world that I want to see, because I believe that wealth can drive change. And I love nature, and that's where I want to put my personal imprint. But Chris, you haven't looked at the price, so it's could be $1 right now. You could have 100 Bitcoin and you could just have $100. And so tell me about, let's start with Chris. Tell us about why does Bitcoin matter so much to you, and what are your ambitions? I mean, when you eventually are going to you're going to accrue some good wealth in your lifetime, what do you plan to do with that?
Firstly, if Bitcoin is at $1 and you guys have agreed to like go on this podcast for an hour to talk about Bitcoin and like everyone's acting fine and normal and dandy, like I would actually start to wonder like who's more crazy. Like I think actually everyone else might be more crazy if you're like, oh, it's like Truman Show stuff now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm pretty sure it's not at $1. If it is, like, I don't know, blink twice and I'll go like, double my DCA or something. But what does it mean to me? Well, look, it means a lot of different things. Like I've been learning about Bitcoin for over a decade now. Obviously, there's been many different stages of that learning and different levels of understanding and things that have been interesting at different times. So I'm still learning, and I think it evolves over all that time as well. So initially, I think I was a little bit of a fuck you kind of teenager growing up. I was in a punk band, and I was didn't like rules and the government, and not for any particular reason, but I guess I was a bit of a rebel. And perhaps this isn't like too different from a lot of punk style kids' upbringings. So like that, I think spoke to me initially, but it wasn't the financial side or the macro side or even really the technical side that spoke to me initially, 10 years ago. It wasn't probably until about 5 years later down the track that I started to actually get an interest in, the technical side of it, the philosophical side of Bitcoin, picked up the white paper and did that deep dive. And then, it's all sort of history from there. But I think it means to me like so many different things, but like, ultimately it's a fairer system, one where we can all engage with the rules knowingly. We might wake up tomorrow and suddenly the Fed prints another 100 million and we have to now deal with the consequences of that new money supply. At least tomorrow when I wake up, I'm going to know for certain what Bitcoin's doing at a fundamental monetary level. And so now we can build on that. We can build businesses on that with that level of assurity on the monetary layer. So I think that's really interesting. I think people who are much smarter than me are going to figure out and solve these problems and connect all these dots. I'm just one little humble Bitcoiner trying my best to fit in where it makes sense. I've found myself to just be a bit of a fill the gap entrepreneur. There's no Bitcoin event. All right, cool. Let's start that. That seems important. I think people want that. I reckon I can figure out the skills and find the people who will help me with that. So here we are. But yeah, like it means a lot. It's given me so much opportunity, even coming from perhaps if you want to say a luckier country, I was able to take risk being younger, of course, and having that foundation. But Bitcoin's given me that multiplier effect on all of the activity. And I'm pretty certain, like you said, that wealth and all that sort of stuff will find itself in due course, as long as I'm, kind of, my philosophy is just trying to do the right thing by everyone and by Bitcoin by myself, and everything else will kind of fall into place. You can't really cheat the system, I found. So why try? And that's fine, because morally I don't want to cheat the system anyway. If I did, then I would have done that years ago. I had heaps of opportunities to do that over the course of my life, and I've kind of found out that I'm not like that. So I'm not going to start now. May as well stay true to that identity. So yeah, Bitcoin's good. It fits in nicely. I can't cheat it. You can't cheat me. We can get along. We can be friends.
Nice. What a refreshing take. Lovely, man. What about you, Dylan? Because I don't even know when you got into the space. I know we're a little bit short on time, but sort of how long you been in the game and what does it mean to you? When I say game, sorry, I mean some people are going to go, oh God, not game. It's not a game.
It's real.
This space, this field, exactly.
Yeah. So I graduated uni in 2010, right after the GFC when Bitcoin was born. And then I studied engineering at uni, but moved into finance. So I kind of worked for about a decade now in various parts of financial markets. I got into Bitcoin originally because one of my friends that I've known for a very long time, I won't drop names, but he was very, very into Bitcoin, and he still is extremely into Bitcoin. And you probably have heard of him.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So he was like, yeah, you should buy some Bitcoin. And I was also into, at that time, things like learning a little bit about Austrian economics and libertarianism and things like this. But yeah, so I did buy Bitcoin back in 2013. I just didn't really learn enough about it at that time. I ended up selling it 2016 when I was in Europe, and I was backpacking and I ran out of money and I needed to buy more beer. So, you win some, you lose some, I guess. And then back in 2020, like many of us, I guess, I went fully down the rabbit hole, as they say. But this has all been driven to me because going back to, say, 2013, 14 era when I started working in finance and having my experience of going through the GFC, I was fascinated with all that stuff. And then I started reading like every Michael Lewis book that I could get my hands on. And I started reading Nassim Taleb's books, Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness and things like that. And that really opened my eyes to how the financial world works and a little bit as to how the fiat money system works, even if I didn't fully get it. But one thing I did get was that the people who owned assets benefited from money printing. And over time, people who owned assets would just get richer and richer and richer. And if you didn't own any assets, you would get poorer and poorer and poorer. And this has been evident since the GFC. Really, it's been the key characteristic of the financial system, right? I kind of back then I kind of lumped Bitcoin into just the bucket of assets and didn't really understand the difference between Bitcoin and all the other assets that you could put your money in. So that's why I bought Bitcoin alongside gold, for example. I thought they were roughly the same. Not that Bitcoin was exponentially better. So I guess what Bitcoin really means to me is probably the easiest way and the best way for people to escape even just a little bit from this fiat system where people who own the assets get richer and richer. Like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Income inequality, that's the way it's going, the way it has been going, the way it will continue to go. That's a fundamental characteristic of the fiat system. And a lot of people ascribe that incorrectly to capitalism. It's not capitalism that does that. It's like crony capitalism, and it's the way that money is created through the issuing of debt that gives benefits to the people who get that debt and get to use that debt first. So to me, it's very much of a economic, or it started as an economic thing first. Bitcoin is a way for anyone, anywhere on the planet, to kind of escape that without having to expose themselves to the management risk of a company, or to, if you want to buy a house or an apartment, you need to actually have a lot of money first. If you want to buy gold, you need to figure out what to do with that, where to put it. You can only buy like, a tiny amount, costs like $1,000. But Bitcoin, you can buy a small amount if you want. Anyone can do it just on the internet. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where I've come to Bitcoin from, and I've really kind of opened my eyes since then to basically, since 2020, learn absolutely everything I possibly can about Bitcoin. And since then, I kind of worked roughly in the infrastructure market and energy markets. I've been obsessed for 4 years now with Bitcoin mining and how that plays out in the how that interacts with energy grids, and that's probably the most fascinating thing about Bitcoin to me.
Awesome. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. The more you go down the rabbit hole, the more you uncover. It's just this thing that continues to give, and there's so much to learn, and you never feel like you are at the end. You know, Chris, you've been in there since 2013. You say, I'm still learning. I've been involved since, I guess, early 2020. That's when everything dawned on me, kind of like you, I guess. The second round didn't. And yeah, I suppose in sort of summarizing what you're both talking about, it's just it's a fair system, and it's a way for people to opt out and preserve their purchasing power, their stored energy, because inflation is theft. And by printing more money, prices go up, asset prices go up, and as a result, they become more and more out of reach of ordinary people. And you know, I've been saying to my quote unquote progressive friend, you should be all over this like a rash, because you don't understand how powerful this is. Like, if you want to empower people, like, teach them about Bitcoin, because once they understand it, it'd be like, if you've got positive cash flow and you can, keep a little portion aside and get that into Bitcoin and hold it for long periods of time, you'll be richly rewarded. Otherwise, it's difficult to have hope in many respects. Boys, I've really appreciated this chat. I'm super looking forward to Bitcoin Alive. The first conference, I wasn't as familiar with all the people in Australia. Now that I've sort of further entrenched and put my tentacles into the space and started a pod and all that, I've got even more friends than I did last year. And it's like, oh, I can't wait. Absolutely pumped. Actually hoping we can put together some sort of like group Airbnb and have some sort of reckless party afterwards. So
I
yeah,
think
that's
that
what
happened. I think that happened last year.
it did.
So
I crashed it. I crashed the
oh, there you
party.
go.
There we go.
Yeah, you'll find yourself wherever it might be. You'll find yourself there with an entry ticket, I'm sure. But yeah, maybe it's a good time we drop the news. I don't think we've actually said this anywhere else publicly, but by the time this perhaps leaks into the mainstreams, then maybe it'll coincide or maybe it'll beat it. But we're stoked to be able to announce Dale is the one and only Dale. He's coming on board as one of the MCs for Bitcoin Alive 2024. So we're absolutely thrilled to have Dale doing
Stoked
that
to
for
be
us. And
involved, boys.
you're going to
And
kill
a
it, man. It's going to be really
real
fun.
privilege. Like, I feel super blessed. I was a
Likewise.
lost fart in a bubble bath some years ago, and I found my people. So I'm fucking pumped.
I love that one. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited for it. No, it's going to be so much fun, and I just can't wait to talk to normies, because I've got like my my elevator pitch is getting quite sharp, just trying to explain the key principles in simple terms. And yeah, it's going to be absolutely magnificent.
Well, we're going to give you a mic now, so you're going to have an even better chance to
yes,
do orange pilling. So
yeah, absolutely. Do either of you have any closing words? Of course, I'll put all the details in the show notes, the website, the dates, etc. We're probably now, by the time this comes out, we'll be less than 2 months away. So yeah, do either of you have any closing or parting words of wisdom?
just thanks for having us on the show, of course, Dale. It's awesome to have a chat with you. Always love having a chat with you, and I'm looking forward to getting together in person, either at Bitcoin Alive or sometime sooner if possible. But look, yeah, we welcome everyone to come along if they can to Bitcoin Alive, March 23rd. I dare say keep that whole sort of week time frame free. There's a lot of stuff going on in Bitcoin land. You got the Bush Bash the weekend before, so if you're in Victoria or if you've got the capacity to attend in Victoria in Beechworth, I'd suggest highly going to the Bitcoin Bush Bash in Beechworth. That'll be fantastic. Then that week leading up into Bitcoin Alive is going to be obviously really awesome and really mega. We've got a bunch of side events in the works, in the plan. So if you're coming from interstate, at the moment, we're recommending trying to get there if you can on the Friday, with penciling in a special event on the Friday night, which we can't yet announce, but hopefully we can announce very shortly if all things go to plan. But yeah, look, just come along, let us know what you want to see. If you've got some feedback, we'll try to obviously incorporate it into the agenda and into the day. We can't achieve everything. Our budget is fairly slim, and we're very much still a startup, and we're largely self-funded, and that gives us constraints to what we can and can't do, of course, but we try to do whatever we can to make all of the attendees happy, of course. But yeah, we are just absolutely thrilled to hopefully meet as many of your listeners there at Bitcoin Alive if I haven't met them before. It's going to be an absolute banger of a day. Like, I'm so excited. Everyone that was there last year knows how cool and how fun it was. We're not resting on that. We want to increase our offering So we got some pretty fun things planned.
Awesome. Dylan, any wise words? Do you want to add anything there?
Tickets are on sale now.
Tickets on sale
Don't
now.
forget,
Yes,
All right.
of course.
Bundle tickets as well. If you want to buy 2, 3, 4, 5 tickets, you get discounts for the more tickets you buy.
Round up your friends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Save
Great
yourself some
idea.
sats. We're all about trying to help you save some sats. So
And you can pay in sats as well if you want.
you can pay in sats if you would like to pay in sats. We will accept that, of course.
Of course. Lovely. And my last question to you guys is, are you going to be playing the Bitcoin Pump It Up track and have us dance on stage or something like that? Is that something we can maybe arrange? Because I couldn't imagine anything better. I mean, you'd have to turn around, Chris, because the price might be flashing somewhere, but that's what I'm imagining. I think things could go apeshit between now and the conference. So I'm absolutely pumped.
It'll be a headline, of course, if someone takes a photo of a couple of hundred Bitcoiners all dancing with their arms in the air and the music saying "pump it up," and the price is just going left to right. But yeah, look, it'll get weird and wacky. There was some impromptu music sessions on the lounge with Knut and a few others, which was really fun. And there's just all random little moments like the after party house stuff that you were talking about for those handful of crazies that want to get into that stuff. There's going to be something for everyone. So looking forward to seeing all the people that are interested in Bitcoin and in Australia or nearby to Australia. We want to obviously cater to New Zealanders and to Southeast Asian residents and abroad. I mean, it's for everyone. We're trying to put Australia on the map in terms of Bitcoin conferences. You mentioned a few earlier, Bitcoin Miami, which is now moving, I think, to Nashville. You've got the Amsterdam one, you've got the Prague one, Pacific Bitcoin in LA. There's all these big named Bitcoin conferences all around the world, but you look at our part of the world and there isn't really anything. So, we've planted the flag. We've said, okay, well, Bitcoin is alive here. There's something going on. It might not be 15,000 people yet. It may never be 15,000 people, but gosh, that would be absolutely mayhem. 15,000. I don't know if I want that, but that'd be great. It'd be obviously good to see. Maybe
it will happen, guys. You've planted the seed. I'm really proud of you both in the sense that someone took the lead. It's wonderful to see that. And last year, I thought it was an absolute success. I think this year will be even better. Kudos to you guys, as well as the lady who pulls it all behind the scenes, Jess. And yeah, I guess to anyone who's listening, who's managed to get through this far, do yourself a favor. Get along there. It's definitely the one event that I highlight as probably the one that you don't want to miss, at least here in Oz. Absolutely high signal. If you just want to come across and meet some really high integrity, high signal, awesome people, come along because you won't regret it. And if anyone's listening from overseas and you've been thinking, I want to go to Australia. Australia looks crazy. There's spiders. You're not going to have an Aussie accent, will you? But come along. Awesome, dudes. Appreciate your time. And I wish you the very best for the conference, although I do know it's going to be a success.
Thank you so much, Dale. Thanks for having us on the pod. And we're looking forward to having you part of the Bitcoin Alive experience this year.
Can't wait to. All right. Cheers, boys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you got some value out of it. Either way, hit me up on Twitter and let me know what you think. My handle is Dale21M. If you've got any suggestions as to people you think I should be talking to or topics I should address too, I would love that sort of feedback. Otherwise, if you want to support the show, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The first is just to share it amongst your friends and family. The more that people hear the message that Bitcoin and crypto are not the same thing, the better. And I want to help people understand that. The second thing you can do is give me a 5-star review on whichever podcast app you're using. Of course, that's only if I deserve it. And last but not least, if you want to stream sats my way via the Fountain app, I'm not going to say no, but it's not expected. Thank you so much for your support thus far. It means the world to me. I appreciate the hell out of you, and the best is yet to come. Much love, friends. I'll see you on the other side.